Hello, it's Ethan Boffman. It is Saturday, December 3rd, 2022. I'm here at the Camarillo Airport and I wanted to talk to you about how do you become a pilot. My pilot story began in my early 20s. I was in graduate school. I was working on my PhD and I decided I was going to take flying lessons. So the first thing I did before I even went to a flying school is I bought a Jeppesen private pilot study guide, and I studied and prepared for the private pilot written exam. And I scheduled the written exam when I had completed the study guide, and I had passed the written exam for the private pilot single engine land certificate. And then I went to the flying school place called Mesquite Aviation, and my instructor, his name was Wiley, and I flew about 40 hours with Wiley, and then he soloed me at about 10 hours, and I did the required cross country, and I ended up taking the check ride in Durant, Oklahoma with a designated pilot examiner, and I passed my private pilot exam. And at that point, that was really just the beginning. That would just open the door for me to learn even more about flying. So that was kind of the start. After I had passed my private pilot check ride, that was really just an opportunity to get my feet wet. I really was not prepared to go cross country long distances or anything like that, and I knew that weather would be a limiting factor, because if you don't know, once you have a private pilot license, you really can't fly if you can't stay separated from the clouds. You can't fly into the clouds. So the private pilot license is just a license to learn how to fly further. So the next step was to gain my instrument rating, and I got my instrument rating with a different flying school that was also at Mesquite, Texas, and my instructor for my instrument rating was Josh Sally, and I think I flew about another 50 or 60 hours with him, and also with another instructor that was in Texas. I did a lot of simulator training for the instrument check ride. And then I took the check ride, I think around 100 hours of flying time for the instrument rating. Following my instrument training, in my career, in my life, it wasn't really a good time to fly. And so I actually took a break for about 10 years. I didn't really fly very much. And I think that happens to a lot of people, and there are these rusty pilot courses that people can take, and so what I ended up doing was, when the time came to start flying again, I went to a flying school and I did a biannual flight review and instrument proficiency check with an instructor. And once I passed that, then I was kind of back in the game and began flying cross country for work, and started to kind of build hours up to about 200-ish or so hours. So after I had kind of accumulated a couple hundred hours, then I decided it was time to work on a new rating. And by this time I had flown most of my time in a Cessna 172, as is pretty common. I'd flown with half a dozen instructors, and I was starting to work on multi-engine rating. So I went to a new flying school and started working on the multi-engine add-on to a private pilot license. And at this time, the airline industry was kind of picking up flight instructors and hiring them. And so I ended up working with about 3 different flight instructors, and I think I spent about 20 hours doing the multi-engine. And that's probably not typical, but that was how it ended up working out for me. And then following the multi-engine add-on to the private pilot license, then I had enough hours. I had more than 250 through commuting for work to start working on the commercial pilot license to replace my private pilot license. So for the commercial pilot license, I worked on that for probably about another 40 or 50 hours with 3 different instructors, and that mostly had to do with just my work schedule. If I was in a different location, and then I would fly with a different instructor, but my primary instructor was in Camarillo, California, and his name was Riley Loventhal, and he's now flying for the airlines, as is quite common for certified flight instructors to get a job with the airlines. So I took my single commercial airplane land check ride here in Camarillo, and then I started working on the multi-engine add-on to the commercial pilot's license, and I did that at Channel Islands also here at Camarillo. And so after I passed both those check rides in April of 2022, then I started getting serious about making an offer on an airplane. And that was when I finally purchased an airplane for my company, and I bought a Beechcraft Baron, which I'm sitting in right now, and I've flown it about 50 hours or so. And so that's kind of my flying story. And I think the private pilot's license, like some people may not understand, is just a license to learn. It's kind of like a student license, even though you're called a private pilot license. And so I would never recommend anyone to just stop at the private pilot license, because it severely limits you in terms of what you can do for work and for leisure, because you have to stay out of the clouds, and you can't fly IFR. So, and then, I'll just kind of keep talking about different things about aviation as time allows.